Now, burnout isn't always obvious. It's a bit insidious. Sometimes it can creep in so slowly that we don't notice it until we've hit that proverbial wall. Welcome to the Redefining Midlife podcast. I'm Jo Clark and I'm so glad you're here. And this is a podcast for women who are ready to break free from outdated stereotypes, rediscover themselves, and embrace the endless opportunities that midlife brings. Each week, I'll share expert advice, actionable strategies, and inspiring conversations with incredible women who are redefining what it means to thrive in midlife and beyond. From health and wellness to reigniting your purpose and passions, this is your go-to podcast for feeling empowered, supported, and seen. And midlife isn't the end. It's your time to shine, rewrite your story, and create a life that you truly love. So let's get started. Hi everyone, and welcome back to episode 154 of Redefining Midlife. My name's Jo Clark, and I am so glad that you've tuned in with me today. Now, have you ever felt those big feelings of absolute overwhelm and ongoing exhaustion? If you have, I see you. And if you haven't, you're damn lucky. And this week's episode has been inspired by a masterclass that I've been invited to present. And the topic is all about unpacking burnout in midlife, what it is, how to prevent it, and then the steps that can help you to recover from burnout. Now, as I was preparing my talk, I realized just how prevailing burnout is. It's something that so many of us experience in midlife or become dangerously close to it in this stage of life. So I thought I'd condense an hour-long interactive masterclass into a shorter but practical podcast episode for you today. Firstly, let me just start by being completely honest about my own story of burnout just a few years ago, 5 years ago. Now, my burnout didn't happen because it was just one thing. It evolved over time and because of multiple reasons. And what I did is what so many women do. I blindly, and if I'm completely honest, I pig-headedly ignored the signals of burnout for absolute years. And like so many of you as well, I did wear a lot of hats, wife, mum, daughter, friend, teacher, mentor. At the same time, there's an awful lot that was going on behind the scenes in my life, and it all took such a huge amount of mental and emotional energy. And for the benefit of any new listeners, I was going through a number of big life transitions that were happening in a short amount of time. I had kids who were still at school and then leaving home, aging parents, and then the grief from the death of my parents, perimenopause and all of the various symptoms, moving house to a new part of the country, having a long-term teaching career that I no longer loved, and one that demanded more and more of me when I just had less and less to give. So the time that I had for myself was limited, and I didn't prioritize what little I had. So if any of you know teachers, maybe you've been or you are a teacher, you'll really get and understand this. In that career, there's a never-ending to-do list, something else that you have to do or improve. So it was all about working those long hours during the week and then bringing more home to do at the end of the day, or fitting in what little things I could do, little bits of time that I could find on the weekends. And in teaching, it sounds like you get a lot of holidays, but you only get to rest for a short time during those windows in the holidays. And because at that stage, I also lived in a rural area, on most weekends, I'd be traveling hundreds of kilometers to see both of my kids who happened to be in two different boarding schools. And in between seeing them and going to all of their events, I'd be visiting family and friends and then come home to do all of the house and garden chores, in a day or half a day. If people asked me how I was, my answer was always busy. And to be honest, I wore that badge with honor, as though it was something to be proud of. I was busy. And I wasn't looking after myself very well. Basic self-care wasn't prioritized. I felt a tiredness that just wouldn't shift. I was irritable, had brain fog, and it was just that whole feeling that no matter how much I gave, it was never quite enough. I always put on a brave face. I follow that script that women are given, that everyone expects us to follow. But then one evening, it was right before a new semester was about to begin, I decided I'd get ahead and I'd open my work email so I didn't have to do it the morning of. That just happened to be the straw that broke the camel's back. I had another list to add. My body, my soul said, that's enough. I was burned out. Really, it was scary. I'd not only lost my energy, but I also lost my sense of who I was. But in time, I came to see that burnout wasn't the end. It was kind of like a wake-up call. It forced me to slow down, to learn how to recover, and eventually reimagine a new rhythm for my life. And I want you to know, if you've been there too, or if you're teetering on the edge, you're not alone. Burnout is incredibly common for women in midlife, but it doesn't have to define us. So what exactly is burnout? Maybe you're wondering. Well, we often think of it as something that happens only at work. But you know what? That's just part of a story. Experts say that burnout is a state of emotional, physical, and mental exhaustion, and it's caused by prolonged and excessive demands. Now those demands might be from your job, but they can also be from caring for children, maybe from supporting aging parents, maybe managing a household, or holding multiple roles at once. In fact, the very first use of the word burnout came from a man called Herbert Freudenberger, who in the 1970s described what he was seeing in exhausted caregivers. That might ring a bell for you. Are you an exhausted caregiver? And that's exactly what so many women in midlife experience. This time of life can feel like the perfect storm. For many of us, it's a stage where a number of responsibilities collide all together. And like I said, my example, we are often still supporting or raising our children, even if they're young adults. We're caring for aging parents, maybe navigating health appointments or supporting them emotionally or perhaps practically, or maybe even caring for them in your own home. And many of us are still working. At sometimes, because of our age, we're at the peak of our careers. And then in that time, we're also dealing with hormonal changes, and that can affect our sleep, our mood, and our energy levels. And on top of that, we're not over yet. We're also living in a culture that glorifies this busyness. We are told to keep on pushing through, to keep achieving, to hold everything together. So it's absolutely no wonder at all that so many of us reach a breaking point. And what makes this even harder is that midlife is often a time of transition. Careers shift, relationships change, children become more independent, our bodies and our hormones change. And underneath it all, there's often this quiet voice that's just asking, who am I now? What's next for me? And that identity shift, combined with the weight of responsibility, makes burnout a very real risk for women at this stage of life. So let's talk about how burnout might show up for you. Now, burnout isn't always obvious. It's a bit insidious. Sometimes it can creep in so slowly that we don't notice it until we've hit that proverbial wall. Now, it usually shows up in 3 areas. It shows up in your body. That extreme fatigue, disrupted sleep, maybe you're getting sick more often, and chronic inflammation from all the stress that you're feeling. Then it shows up in your mind, brain fog, forgetfulness, trouble focusing. And then it shows up in your emotions, irritability, withdrawal, maybe you're losing joy in the things that you used to love. Just think about that for a moment. Does one, some, or all of those feel familiar to you right now? Now, I ignored many of these signs for a long time. Maybe you or someone you know does too. So then what do you do about it when you've recognized it? Well, first step, recognize it, notice it. Pause and acknowledge that something isn't right. And then ask yourself, this is a tricky one, what's on my load right now? what if I could let go or delegate? And I totally get that we want to do it all as women, but it really doesn't serve us, does it? Maybe you could simply say no. That little word no is one of the most powerful tools that we have to protect our energy. The second step is just seek support. Maybe that's leaning on family and friends. Maybe it's talking to a colleague, or maybe it's just reaching out for professional help as well. Just know you don't have to do it alone. Then start beginning micro rest practices. These are those tiny steps that can help your nervous system reset. 5 minutes of sitting quietly to enjoy a cup of tea or coffee. Find that time. A minute or two of mindful breathing, maybe a short nap, a walk outside without your phone, maybe switching off screens an hour earlier. These things aren't luxuries. They are essentials. Now, I'd love to share the 4 keys to recovery, because just like burnout didn't arrive overnight, when it comes to moving forward, recovery isn't about a complete life overhaul in one go. It's about taking steady, intentional steps. And I like to think of them as 4 keys. So key number 1, restore your body. Prioritize rest, nourish yourself, and move in ways that support your energy rather than drain it. Number 2, reset your mind. Journaling, meditation, or just doing one thing at a time can bring back some clarity. Thirdly, reconnect with others. We as women heal in connection, not in isolation. So share your experience with some trusted friends, or maybe a supportive community can help to lighten your load. And then fourthly, reimagine your rhythm. This is all about boundaries, letting go of perfectionism, and then rediscovering the things that bring you joy. And as you hear me saying these, just ask yourself, which one feels most important for me right now? Now, living in a constant state of busyness and overwhelm will lead to burnout. And it is absolutely no way to live your life. But just recognizing the signs and then taking steps to protect your energy and well-being, reducing the burdens and the load at work or at home by asking for help or delegating, or maybe even saying that magical word no, will just help you to avoid or reduce the effects of burnout. So let me leave you with 3 questions that you might like to reflect on after this episode. Number 1, what do I want more of in this season of life? Number 2, what do I need to let go of? And finally, what's one small step that I can take this week towards a more energized, fulfilled life? Now, thank you so much for joining me today. I hope our conversation together has helped you feel seen, supported, and maybe even reminded you to take just one small step for yourself this week. And if you'd like to go deeper, you can always explore more of my work, whether that's my online wellness membership, my private mentoring that I offer, or some supportive resources that you can find on my website. Just go to joclarkcoaching.com. And if you found this episode to be helpful, please share it with a friend who might be navigating burnout too. Now remember, you are more than the roles that you play, and it's never too late to create the life that you truly desire. Now take care, and I'll see you again next week. Thanks so much for spending your time with me today. I hope you feel inspired to make the next chapter of your life the best one yet. And remember to share this episode with someone else who would love it, and connect with me on Instagram or LinkedIn at Jo Clark Coaching. All the links and the details from today's episode are in the show notes or at joclarkcoaching.com. And if you enjoyed this episode, please follow or subscribe this show on your favorite podcast app and leave a 5-star rating and review. This helps more midlife women find these empowering conversations. I can't wait to chat with you next week. Until then, take care and keep creating a life that you love.